Okay, so for our first question, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and the work you do with the Wond'ry and how you got to be in that position you are?
Yeah, so my name's Dave Owens or David A. Owens, whatever. I'm a professor at Vanderbilt. I've been here for quite a while, for over 20 years. I am normally, my background is in engineering. I
Mhm.
have an undergraduate in electrical engineering and a master's in mechanical engineering and a PhD in industrial engineering. But I got really interested and I worked through at various periods through that, but I got very interested in the problem of innovation.
Mhm.
And I did a lot of technical work, technical innovation, and I got to a place where I realized it was probably more a people problem than it was a technology problem. Um, Atoms generally behave. Like if you say, I think this electron will be here at this time, like it sort of works in that way, whereas people are much less, they don't behave the same way electrons behave, at least not at a large level. And so I didn't know that you could study people the way you study, you know, electrons, electrical engineer. And so when I did my PhD, I did a PhD studying the let's call it the issues of innovation. That is, how do you work with people when you don't know whether it's going to work or not?
Mhm.
So, like with especially with disruptive innovation, you're never really sure if it's going to work. And so the one of the problems is you're never certain of which way you should be going,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of the organizations, especially startups that start out, are very flat. And so what you have is you don't have a hierarchy. You don't have like a, hey, we're not sure what to do. Let's ask the boss. Well, if we're really flat, there's no boss, right? And so we have to figure it out. And then also, organizations use feedback. Like, let's just try this. Does it work? Okay, it
Mhm.
didn't work. Let's try something else. Try that. And if your project you're working on is not going to be done for, say, 5 years or 10 years, there's no feedback. It's hard to know from a feedback perspective. And so the question I was really researching was, given all those circumstances, how do organizations that are doing innovation stay sort of what we call in control? How do they actually know what to do? How do you get up in the morning and say, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to go, and feel good about it and feel like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And so those are all people problems, and it's really different than the problems of matter or, science stuff like that. So I studied that, did a PhD in that at Stanford. All my degrees were at Stanford at various times. And then I came to Vanderbilt to teach, and I took a job in the business school, and I taught leadership, um, team management, some innovation stuff as well. Okay. And so then that all went fine. And then fast forward in around, and I was doing a lot of let's call it consulting or what I call educational intervention. Like a company says, hey, we have this problem with innovation. I say, well, let's just look at it from an educational perspective, from a behavioral perspective, from a organizational culture perspective, and see what it is that's going on in that way. So I was doing a lot of that. And so when in around 2011, 2012, a decision was made at Vanderbilt. It wasn't my decision, it was way above my pay grade. But the decision was made to do an innovation center. And everyone's saying, like, well, who should do this? And everyone's looking around. And they say, Owens, you're going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, why me? And they said, well, you know about this stuff. So, and I sort of knew, as they say in the line of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? And so I sort of knew enough to get this started. And so I flew around the country and went to a number of different places, like Ohio State, Stanford has a D school,
Mhm.
Harvard has a thing called iLab. Northwestern had, I mean, all these schools had stuff. And so I just basically studied them. And I had a crew of people who helped me, students and others at Vanderbilt. And we defined this thing, which came to be called the Wond'ry. At the time, it was called the IP, the Innovation Pavilion. So we're a pavilion on a building. And so they call it the IP.
Yeah.
You get IP, yeah. And so we defined that they were building a new building anyway, and so we were a pavilion on that building, and so we opened in the fall of 2017.
Yeah.
I was not the director. I worked with the architects and did all that stuff. I was not the director. They hired a director. He ran it for the first 3 years, and then he left after his contract was up. And then I stepped in, and that was around 2019, 2020. And
Mhm.
I've been the director since then. And so I basically gave up well, I think I'm still a faculty member in the business school and in the engineering school, but basically I've not been doing a lot of teaching. Let's put it that way,
Mhm.
like I was before. So that's sort of where we've come to. And as the Wond'ry, what we see is our mission. What I've said is our mission is building innovation capacity for the university. And so, like, if you want to run a marathon, you have to have like lung capacity, and if you want to play music, you have to have rhythmic capacity. And so we're trying to build a thing we call innovation capacity because the university is really good at discovery. We have a lot of discovery capacity. So if I in this building I'm in, if I go down in the basement, there are these really expensive microscopes, like like $50 million microscopes, and you can discover all kinds of things, but you can't make something change in the world because of it.
Mhm.
Like you can look at something and say, write a paper and say, hey, look, I figured out this atom does this and this does that and this nanomaterial does that. But until that insight becomes something that's a change in the world, it hasn't happened. And universities are all set up for discovery, but not for innovation.
Mhm.
And so we park there. We try to make sure that anyone who wants to bring things across the boundary or is able to, anyone who says, I've discovered something, I'd like to make a change in the world, make the world a better place, or I learned this thing about reading and kids don't read and how can I help them? Or I discovered this thing about how you make robot. This one lab across the hall, they make robotic cilia. So like in your lungs and your esophagus, there are these cilia that move the mucus. And if you have cystic fibrosis, those don't work.
Mhm.
And so they have this idea for this implantable artificial esophagus that has artificial cilia that they built in our clean room
Mhm.
to move the mucus. And so they're not production people. They don't know about how you get through FDA. They don't know all of those things. And so we're the capacity to help them do that.
Mhm.
And so we serve students and faculty and staff and alumni and even other people in the community. We have maker spaces. We have uh, basically consultants available for people who are the people who are our staff, all are experts in something. And so help anyone who comes in to do their innovation problem. And the innovation problem could be like, I just want to learn how to 3D print, right? And that's a change in the world. And if someone knows how to do that, they're probably better off than if they don't know how to do that, especially in this day and age.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyways, that's a long-winded answer to your question. So I'll stop there.
What prompted the decision to partner the Wond'ry with the School of Engineering?
So when we started, we were actually independent of all the schools. So Vanderbilt has 10 schools and colleges, School of Music, School of Medicine, School of Nursing, right? There's 10 of those, divinity, business, law, whatever. There's 10 of those, and we were sort of outside of that system. And the idea was basically to be in a place where we could truly be interdisciplinary, we could truly be not sort of focused on one community of people.
Mhm.
Like if we were in the divinity school, but only be the divinity people, and that's what we focus on. And so, and engineering is a great place for lots of the technical things, but for the business stuff, that's the business school. And so we're trying to stay out of it in that way. But as it turns out, it's hard to be a special project forever. And so we had to find a home, find somewhere. And so what happened is we've basically taken a part of us and moved it to the business school. And that's the business. If I want to start a business, I want to commercialize, I want to do that stuff. I do that in business school. And the innovation, ideation, early stage technical development, deep technology, we do that in the engineering school. And our job is to sit between them, sort of. So I report to the dean of engineering, and I have a colleague who reports to the dean of business, but we are constantly in contact and we're constantly moving back and forth. And so what was to answer your question directly, I think the reasoning was and it was not my decision to make, but it was my decision to implement. Let's say it that way. And so the intention is to allow the ideation, the first part of business creation, that very early stage stuff to flourish, and then allow and then move it towards a business commercialization. And the business school has a lot of resources, has lots of things for that. Engineering school has lots of resources for that early stuff. They said, well, let's just put those activities closer to the resources where they are. It's kind of ironic that I didn't go to the business school side because I'm a business school professor. But on the other hand, the story I was telling was that I'm actually an engineer. I mean, I think genetically I'm an engineer, actually.
Yeah.
So my brain just works that way. That's how I think. So, yeah.
In addition to that new partnership, what other changes are being implemented to support the Wond'ry through the future and into the new era?
I think so one thing we're deciding to do, we have call it a mission. The university has a strategy, like here's what we'll do and here's how we'll be. And then all the different schools, the departments, the school of education, school of business, school of engineering, we all have to sort of be able to map up to that. And so I have to be able to map up into the engineering school that maps into the higher one. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do more courses. So up to this point, we've never done a 4-credit course
Yep.
because we're not a school, we're a center. And according to the way that Vanderbilt runs, only schools can hire faculty, can give degrees, can give credit hours, can do all of those kind of things. And as a center, we were not allowed to do that just in our system. And so one of the changes that's going to allow us to do is to offer more courses. They're going to be different kinds of courses than just your sort of standard like physics, sit there and listen to the person and watch the back of their head while they write on the board. We're going to not that kind of stuff. We want to do stuff that's actually much more hands-on, engaging, more practice focus. We're probably going to hire faculty, but they're going to be practitioners. That is, people who do this for work.
Yeah.
Like on Thursday afternoon, hey Joe, like leave from Amazon where you work and come on over and teach a class, and then you can go back to work afterwards, like that. So that's one thing that's going to happen. Another thing that's going to happen is we're going to try to we're trying to do is help change engineering education. Engineering education is I don't know, it can be kind of especially in the early parts, kind of off-putting that you're doing all this math and physics and stuff like that, that actually can tend to kill the desire that a person has to be creative and to be in that way. And so I don't know if you do you draw much?
Not too much, no.
Probably when you were 5, you did, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is in engineering, it's like when I'm a kid and I'm tinkering and I'm building Lego and all that stuff, and then they put me in physics and math and all those courses, then they kill my willingness to draw, my willingness to do that stuff. And so part of what we're trying to do is change engineering education. Part of what we're trying to do is define a place where people who want to be around technology don't have to major in engineering to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And engineers who want to be around people who are not engineers.
Yep.
People hang out with the people that are like them. Technically it's called homosocial reproduction, like similar people, you reproduce people like you. And so so what we're trying to do is build a place in between where that students in economics, students in art, students in music, students in divinity, students in business can be around engineers. And so we have this sort of, like, if you imagine there's a big engineering circle and there's another circle, that there's a little Venn space, and that's the space we want to inhabit. We've sort of been doing that, but we haven't done it from a place of being able to, I think, a place of strength of having the power of a school behind us in terms of hiring, in terms of giving credit hours, in terms of all of those things. I think that would be the major change. Otherwise, we're in the same physical space. We still have our maker spaces. We have a full maker staff. We do a lot of design thinking. Do you all do design thinking in your high school?
We had to take a class in design in middle school, but not through high school.
Okay, yeah. And so that's basically where you just, it starts with empathy. How can I design for you unless I know you? And it's not even how can I design for you, how can I design with you if I don't know you? Then there's the framing, then there's ideation, so basically there's a set of steps of that you go through. And so we do that, but we do it with student projects, but we also do it with faculty projects. I think it's sometime later this week, there's a program called Program for Talented Youth. So every summer, Vanderbilt runs a summer camp for talented youth. They have all kinds of courses, everything from like astronomy to zoology and everything in between. And they have questions about how they're doing that and could they be doing that better. And so we'll go through a design thinking process with them to help them do that. We've done it recently. There's a new Institute for National Security. INS, something like that. And they wanted to form, but they weren't really sure what should they do. How do you do that? How many people should we have? What are our mission? How many, all of that stuff. And people can figure it out, but it's easier to figure it out if you have a process for doing it than it is just to sort of randomly make it up. Well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Okay, let's try this. It didn't work. Instead of getting people in a room and having them have facilitated conversations about what they're trying to do together. And so that's what I study, is how to get people to recognize what they're trying to do together and then stay coordinated in a process. process being, coordinated behaviors in time.
Mhm.
If we coordinate our behaviors in time, that's called a process.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, more long-windedness.
What makes Nashville and Vanderbilt itself a good center for a place like the Wond'ry, and how is like innovation tied into the city?
Yeah, it's good. So I think in the history of Vanderbilt, we've spent a lot of time becoming a really proper research university. So we have high national rankings, we have all of those things, and we were producing a lot of um, knowledge, like the discovery part that I talked about earlier. So we're producing a lot of knowledge, and so now I think one thing is if you take in a lot of federal dollars, for example, so the National Science Foundation or the National Institutes for Health, notwithstanding what's happening now with the administration, but if I accept your tax dollars to do research, then I have an obligation to actually put something back out in the world to
Yep.
change that. And so I think that's sort of one thing that it is. As a university, we're at a place where we need to take responsibility for that. Another thing is that Nashville is fairly it's kind of weirdly interesting. It's becoming, when I first moved here a long time ago, there's kind of a Christian part that's sort of very explicit, sort of Christian thing, and then there's this country music thing. It's sort of weird, like how they sort of interacted or didn't interact in some ways. The music was very um, out there, very, every cab driver was a musician. You couldn't go anywhere and not see a musician doing something. And the big industry in Nashville was not playing necessarily; it was songwriting. And
Mhm.
so there's all these songwriters in Nashville. So all the songs that are probably your favorite songs, or were at least at one point in time, were written by people in Nashville. And then they would sell the song to someone who would then record it and become this,
Mhm.
Garth Brooks or whoever. It would be their song, but the person who wrote it was actually some joker in a,
Mhm.
working in a little coffee shop over here. And so that's a very creative part of music, right? That's a very creative part of that. So that was here. Also, there's a lot of healthcare in Nashville. So if you go find a hospital bed in a hospital somewhere and say, who controls this hospital bed? Half of them in the country are controlled out of Nashville. So
Mhm.
there's a big company called HCA, Hospital Corporation of America. There's a big program called a company called Community Health. And so a large percentage of the hospital beds in the country, that is, the hospitals, are controlled out of Nashville. And so that's another sort of really interesting kind of industry that's here. There are a number of company headquarters. Nissan,
Yep.
their U.S. headquarters is here. Bridgestone, Firestone, their headquarters is here. Who else? LP, Louisiana Pacific Building. Who else? Amazon has a mini headquarters here. They have HQ1 in Seattle, HQ2s in Virginia, and we're HQ3. Oracle's moving a lot of their, I think, 7,000 people here. And so there's something that's happening here that is very, I don't know, sort of growth and exciting. I think one of the things is, and I think it is absolutely I'm very ambivalent about it, is that there's no state income tax.
Yep.
And so what happens is that makes it nice to see all of your paycheck, but then if you are homeless, if there's any social services that you need, if those aren't there, the schools aren't great, and so there's a high sales tax.
Mhm.
So they even tax like baby food and stuff like that. And so in that way, it's if you have money, it's a great place to be. If you don't have money, it's not so great after all. But also, Nashville has been, I think, because of the music industry primarily, that it has been um, I don't know. Everyone wants to have played here.
Yep.
Like Rolling Stones have played here, at least in my time. I've been here 15 or 20 years. They've been played at least 5 times in Nashville.
Mhm.
Saw Earth, Wind, and Fire. Saw, on top of all the country stuff that happens here. And so it's considered sort of a creative place. It has lots of creativity in ways, like in LA, there's lots of movie making, and Hollywood is a thing. In New York, there's they have their own kinds of things, Wall Street and finance and all that. And so in Nashville, it's really a lot of the music and the hospital stuff that's here. So I don't know that it's necessarily that there's something special about Nashville that makes us the right place to do this, but I know that we're doing it here,
Mhm.
uh, and it's being embraced. And so in that sense, that people in Nashville, they see what we're doing, they appreciate what we're doing. They say, hey, we need a lot more of that. And so then we see a lot of venture capitalists are moving here and people who fund the innovation part, right? Not the discovery part, the innovation part. And so there's a lot of people like that in town now. Probably in the last, I don't know, 18 months, probably like 100 venture capitalists have moved, literally picked up their families and moved to Nashville. So, and so they're looking for things to support and things to invest in because on the coast, it's so competitive. So I think people see it as a greenfield anyway. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I tried.
In addition to your on-campus partnerships like you had, and we explained with the School of Engineering, do you have
Yeah.
any partnerships with off-campus organizations to help expand resources to students?
Yeah, so we do. Right now, we're doing a lot with, we call them ICP industry collaborators or industry partners. So Nissan, for example, we've done a lot of work with Nissan. They have an innovation process inside. There's a group in Nissan called the Product Planning Group. And so if you went there today and say, hey, what are you working on? What they're working on is the car that will ship in 10 years. So they're working in this because there's a long cycle. Maybe it's in 5 years. So they have, they're working on stuff that in 5 years they'll be ready to go. And so that is subject to a lot of the kind of things I talked about. We know that technology is changing fast. Is it electric? Is it combustion engine? Is it, do you get a screen or do you get a dashboard? All of those kind of questions that they have to answer. And so we've been working with them to help them with their design process. And through that work, when I say helping, what we do is we hire students to do the work with them. And so you as a student, even a first-year student, freshman, you would say, hey, I'm interested in doing this kind of work. And I say, okay, here's your assignment. You're going to spend this time with Nissan. You're going to help them with their innovation process. We have a process that we're going to use to help them with their process. So Nissan's been a big one. Mars Pet Care, that's another one that has the headquarters here. That's a huge company, Mars. And so that's another one where we are working with them. Bridgestone Firestone, another one. And so what happens is in these big companies, you can get, as a student, you can get access to projects and things that are, resume worthy. Did a project for Nissan, like that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal to have on your resume in that way. But then also you're doing it in a way that is the creative part of the work. And so it's not like just, hey, go be an intern, work in a cubicle, for your summer for a famous company, but you didn't get to do anything interesting. Here, you're actually interacting with the people who do the work. We had recently had an AI project with Nissan also, and it's probably going to save them like $5 million a year or something like that. And that's 5 students working on a project who are able to help them have insights. So that's one way that we have the partnerships with students. We also have a lot of work with nonprofits, and so there's a thing also. There is no state income tax, but a lot of the social work is done through what they call service. And so a lot of the students who come here or do service work and want to work with nonprofits, want to work with, there's a Nashville Food Project. There's the thing called Room at the Inn for homeless people. There's a thing called Thistle Farms for women who've been, in sex trafficking and who are trying to recover and come out of that. So a lot of that stuff is private. It's a nonprofit, but it's done by not by the state, but by private people. And so those organizations also have needs and have projects and have things that we work on with them. And so again, what we try to do is we try to work through students. So have the students do the work, and then you become skilled in that thing. And then also you get to see how the world works. At Nissan, when we were doing some of the Nissan work, a lot of students didn't realize that there was a job called product planning, where you have to think about the car that's going to ship in 5 years. They thought you just go to a car lot and buy a car. Like, you don't think like, where did this come from and who thought about it and what's the process and how do they know this and why are the seats green and why, all those decisions. And if you're not an engineer, but you like cars, like there's a perfect place for you. These people are not necessarily engineers. There are other kinds of people. So it's exposing students to situations they wouldn't be in. It's putting in pragmatic places. It's showing you how to take the learnings that you have, the expertise that you have, even as a first-year student, you have expertise. How do I apply that in a productive way with a company in some ways? And then also the internal consulting we do, like I said, this program for talented youth, the National Security Institute, the internal consulting, we train students to do that work also. So, and we pay students partly because if I pay you, then the work that you produce if it's patentable, your name goes on the patent, but I own the patent.
Yeah.
And so my deal with Nissan is if I pay you and you come up with something, your name goes on the patent, but then I own it and I give it to Nissan, give it back to them.
Mhm.
Because what they don't want is for you to invent something and then go talk to Toyota. Yeah. So that way it's, and then you get money too, though. So that's good.
Uh-huh.
And you get a patent on your resume.
So the Wond'ry is obviously based at Vanderbilt and
Mhm.
Nashville itself. You talked a little bit about other innovation centers coming up at other college campuses.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important to expand those like innovation resources to areas like high schools and other places like that, or should it stay at like kind of the higher education level?
That's a great question. And I think it's interesting because a lot of, there's sort of this, I don't know what it's sort of like, okay, here's what I think about. So if you, students in high school, people like you're like really busy and kind of, you have lots of program, like over programmed, we would call it.
Yeah.
So if you're a first year student here, you can join a sorority, or you can go to a football game, or you can take music lessons, or you can go to the pottery studio, or you can, right? It's just like so much. It's like you're not even sure what to do, and it's just an extension of what high school is like for many people. It's like there's so much possibility, and so one of the problems is knowing where to put something that it's not creating more um, people doing it because they feel like they have to do it because it makes a better college application
Uh-huh.
instead of people doing it because I'm really curious about quantum theory. It's kind of weird because how can in quantum theory, the one of the ideas is this kind of crazy idea is that every electron knows every other electron because they were all together at the Big Bang.
Oh.
Right. There's this one thing at the Big Bang. And so everyone knew everyone and then it started expanding. And so every electron should know every other electron. And that's what part of the theory with quantum theory is that if I could tell the spin of these two electrons, that somehow there's information there.
Uh-huh.
And if you're like that's great, like what? Like even Einstein was freaked out about it. He called it spooky.
Uh-huh.
Einstein said, that stuff, that's spooky. Or as we say now, crazy, that's crazy shit, man. And so if you're truly curious about that, where do you go? Right? Are you like the local school nerd and you're just like off by yourself, or do how do you hang out in the physics teacher's office, during and so the question is like, how do I put things in a place where people have access to them in a way that doesn't force them to not do the stuff they feel like they have to do in order to get in college and do all that stuff, but that really makes it truly like an exploration, that makes it truly like I have this insatiable curiosity about this thing, like how can I go discover that? And so that's the problem that we're trying to, and I'm not call it a problem, it's a challenge that we're trying to address. It's just say, and that's part of what I was saying, like we're trying to live at this place between being a hardcore engineer. They're super, like if you're an engineer at Vanderbilt, at any decent engineering school, man, you don't get your first elective until like your senior year, right? I mean, because you're just like, you're in there, you're doing circuits and thermodynamics and you're doing all this stuff. And so if you don't want to be that, and if you don't want to be only a music student, it's like, how do I live somewhere between there? Like, how do I get access to that? So I think that in a way, our students have access to this, but we haven't sort of cracked the nut on how to make them actually do it because they're curious, do it with a feeling that there's not a lot of risk. Oh, if you mess up my GPA, I'm screwed. Like do it without, all of those kind of things. And so that's the part. And if we can solve that, then we can come down. But I think the first set of ways we're going to think about it is to think about summer programs with some of the local schools. And again, we'll use students who are students here to do that work, right? To help younger people do that. One of the underlying goals is to have everyone in society should have a basic understanding of technology. It's like it might be hard to believe, but people did not know how. My mother had to teach her how an ATM machine worked. Like you put your card in here, and then what? Then you push your buttons, and so now it's like AI is like that. Chat GPT, like you probably have parents or grandparents certainly who don't know how to use Chat GPT, who don't understand it basically, and so to be a productive citizen in this world, and also when to believe what it's telling you and when to say like that's BS, like that's complete, it's hallucinating. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done there also in terms of helping people understand that we are in a technology information age, and there's basic stuff you need to know how to do. Just like you need to know how to use an ATM or you know how to use Venmo, you need to know how to use how AI works and how that happens. And at first, there'll be people like you who are, high performing and people who are really curious about the world and doing things, but that needs to trickle down also. And so part of our goal will be to just basically move down the chain and move earlier and earlier. Some places do it really. Most universities don't do it. So if I do something, a program for an eighth grader, it's a really long time before Vanderbilt sees a benefit of that.
Yeah.
Right. If I do it with a senior, that's different. If I do it with a first year with an eighth grader, that's really really different. And so that's something we have to think about. Is the what is the responsibility of universities and higher education to the primary and secondary education system? Should we be fixing that or helping that? Should we be doing things there or not? Or should we just act in our self-interest and say, okay, if Jack's really smart and really good, I'll support him because then he'll apply here, and then I'll benefit from all the good stuff he does here, instead of an eighth grader who might go to Yale or go to state.
What does success look like for the Wond'ry in this new chapter?
Okay, success looks like I think part of it is that there's a reality, there's sort of a pragmatism around sustainability. Organizations need to be sustainable. We're a nonprofit, but we still have to make money to live, right? And so I think that's something there. But I think what it looks like is it looks like that more people are interested in the place that lives between hardcore deep tech engineering and what that looks like and how to manage that in society, right? So that there's that place in between there. I think having more people come out like that. I think more of our students that graduate who aren't feeling like they're in the boring part of a job. We have a lot of students that go into consulting. Mm-hmm. And if you just do straight econ economics major at Vanderbilt and you do really well, you end up as a being hired by, I don't know, BCG or whatever the big consulting firms are, but it's not the most interesting work in that company. You'll be like, hey, here's a bunch of folders, go in your cubicle and like bring me back a spreadsheet or something like that. And the students that we're working with, they can actually be the ones who talk to clients, the ones who figure out what the real problem is, the ones who get to apply a lot of different things. We're after what we would call T-shaped people. Like I know enough about a lot of things. I still have a strength, but I know how my strength applies in these different areas, and not just like within engineering, but across the university, across all the things that we study, that we think about. Mm-hmm. So I think that's it. And we're trying to do we're designing a minor. And so, there are majors, lots of people have majors, and we're designing a minor, and that's the one mechanism to get people to go in that way. And we're also looking at creating a master's program for basically for adults who want to, adults, we're all adults, but for people who want to understand more about that world of design and the world of intentional change. Because that's what design is. Just like I want to make a change and I just do it intentionally. Because I can make change or randomly. I just want to be intentional about it. Then I call it a design. Yeah. So I think those are the things, and we're still figuring it out. So tomorrow, actually, literally tomorrow, we have our own internal strategy meeting where we're all going to get together and Post-its and whiteboard and use our own process, eat our own dog food, use our own process to try to figure out exactly what order we're going to be able to do things and how to do those things. And so that in the fall, we'll start strong with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just one final question. Where do you see the Wond'ry 5 years from now? Do you have any goals you're envisioning for the future, and you yourself with your own partnership with the organization? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I see success would be that anyone with a really interesting idea would say, oh, I should go to the Wond'ry. Because right now people have an interesting idea and they say, well, I don't know what to do. I'll just go to the football game, forget it.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything with it. And so that someone would say that. So that would be success, is that it just pops into everyone's head immediately. They know where we are. And if they don't come here, it's because they don't want to come here. It's not because they don't know about us. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we have a thriving set of practitioners who are part of our faculty, that is people who work in the world who do really interesting work. Like if someone's a songwriter, like, they know a lot about really interesting stuff about how you work with words and how emotion is expressed and how do you tell a good story and all of those things. So having a lot of practitioners, so that'd be one extreme. Another extreme, I know a guy, he's a designer. I worked with him when he was at Oric. Oric is a big vacuum cleaner company.
Uh-huh.
And so he knows everything about how to get something manufactured. And he could tell you, like, if I say, okay, Chris, how much is this? And he would say, okay, that's 13. It's $2.37. Like, that's like, what, is that including tax or not? He says, yeah, that's import duties and everything like that. So like that kind of person also, because when someone comes in and says, I want to do something, we're not really sure what it is. Is it about human emotions? Is it about product cost? Is it about whatever? And so that we're able to have people either tightly connected to us or even on our staff who are able to help the innovation process. So again, there's no change to the mission of building innovation capacity. Um, my I love teaching, and I haven't been teaching for a few years now, and it's sort of getting antsy about that. And so my own goal is to resurrect and update some classes that I have. So my friend from Oric, the guy I was just sort of describing, he's given me 6 vacuum cleaners. They're exactly identical ones. They're ones like you would carry around and vacuum the thing. But he's given me the BOM, the bill of materials, so I know how much every single piece in there costs. This is how much we paid for the cable. This is what we paid for this piece of plastic. There's a little rubber knob that goes on top of the on-off switch. There's how much we paid for that. And so in my class, what I do is I have the students take it apart, and then they have to weigh it and figure out how much everything costs, and they have to see if they can come close to where the BOM says it should be, like $56.47. And so we have a little contest there. I think that's kind of cool because a lot of people don't know how the stuff. So certainly in this space, everything, there's a couple of trees over there that you probably see off in the distance that are not designed by people, but where they are was designed by someone. Like someone decided to put that tree there. And so how do those decisions happen? Like, how do people decide, like, should it be black or blue? Like, should it be green? Should it screw off? Should it flip off? And so what I want people to do is know how those decisions are made and understand when something sucks, where you might intervene and fix it. Like, oh, they keep overlooking this thing. Like every car, if a woman has long fingernails, she can't use the damn thing. It's like someone needs to fix that. There's half of the population is women, right? Mm-hmm. And more women are involved in the car buying process, even when men buy the cars, than men are. And so they buy cars for themselves, but they also have weight over the family car, and they also have weight over and so like how you use your touchscreen with fingernails should be something people think about. Yeah. And unless you know that some decisions were made about it and how those decisions were made, you wouldn't know what to do with the peeve of like, damn it, why can't they fix this? And it's been only in the last maybe 2 or 3 years that there's a woman-sized crash test dummy. Really? Women are smaller. They have different, they're different, but all the test dummies were made of men. Mm-hmm. Like, okay. And I only learned this because of the stuff we were doing with Nissan, and there's some young women designers in there, and they're saying, hey, like, we're designing this stuff, but what about us? Yeah. And so my goal, so in 5 years, is to say that people can see these issues and understand where the process either went wrong or where there was an oversight or where someone didn't have an insight that would help them think further. Mm-hmm. And also subversively and maybe even selfishly, I would love for there to be more people who think like engineers in the world, very systems thinking, very sort of, predictable outcomes. And we still have to work on what the outcomes are that we want. Like we don't need a bunch more atomic bombs, but we do need some other kind of things that make the world better. Power, we need better power. Clean water, we need lots of clean water, not just in this country, in all kinds of countries, making things really inexpensive. And so if I can, after 5 years, maybe after 10 years, point to graduates who graduated 5 years ago and say, look where they are, look at these people, like they're working in Nepal trying to make the better water. They're working in Washington trying to make it more efficient, more effective. They're working in engineering, Boeing trying to make a plane last longer and fly higher and be cheaper and things like that. But they're able to do it not because they are the best thermodynamics person in the world, but because they know they're a really good thermodynamics person, but they know how to talk across
Well,
business and humanity and all the kind of things. So because if you're Boeing, you need people in there who think about why people travel.
mhm,
Why do people travel? Engineers don't normally know that, but it matters to building a plane because that's all planes are for, is to help people travel.
mhm.
And if you don't know why people do it, then like, okay, you're kind of screwed. So anyway,
Well, thank you so much for your time.
so wait, so okay, that's good. But Jack, I want to know about you now.
Yeah,
What do you plan to do? You're a senior. You're
I'm a
a
senior.
rising senior.
I am a senior right now, graduating in just about a month
Oh
now.
yeah. And then what happens?
I'm going to University of California, Santa Barbara,
Yay.
and I'm gonna go studying English for now. I'm thinking about maybe switching my major, doing something in global studies or
Uh-huh.
economics.
Hmm.
So after that, I'm not really sure. I'm thinking maybe something within like the real estate.
Hmm.
But I also am looking to continue through with this type of work, like doing
Yeah.
interviews and spreading online with stuff like magazines and stuff is very interesting to me and all
So
that.
do you see yourself as a writer?
I could see myself as a writer. I'm not sure about that being my profession, but still keeping it as like a hobby would be
Okay.
interesting to me. I'm
Yeah.
really into music as well. I like, songwriting, stuff like that. So
Do you play music?
I play guitar.
Oh, good for you, man. I played when I was in college. I was in college my first year and I got completely depressed. I grew up, actually, I'm half German. My mom's German. And I grew up in Germany and I came to the US when I was 18. And I had severe culture shock. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I was just like completely perplexed. Like in Germany, when you pull up to a stoplight, the light is on your side of the intersection. It's not on the other side of the intersection. And
Mhm.
so I'm driving, I go and I stop, and I'm in the middle of the intersection. Oh shit! Like I should have stopped back there. It's like little things like that that add up. But anyway, I played. I was in a punk band. I played because the counselor at school said, "Do something you love." I said, "Really? I'm allowed to do that?" And he said, "Yeah." So I played in a punk band for like 3 years. We toured all over the U.S., probably like 90 cities, 100 cities, probably in
Uh-huh.
that. Out of Palo Alto, out of at Stanford. We were all Stanford students. But then lately, I've taken it back on. I've started playing jazz music now again as a drummer. I'm a drummer,
Uh-huh.
and so it's really a good thing. It's sort of a interesting way to communicate with people. And
Mhm.
songwriting, I see, is the same way that sometimes we're playing in the improv set in the improvisational setting, and it's kind of cool to feel these connections with people in some ways. The other thing I was going to say is my wife's a writer. Um, she's done lots of technical writing, technical editing, things like that. And so interestingly, she's grappling right now with AI.
Yeah.
She's a writing tutor for the business school students, help with their cover letters and resumes. And sometimes they bring her this complete stuff that looks like it's sort of all the words make sense, but it's like complete garbage. And she always knows like, okay, that was written by AI. So for you, because AI is really changing the whole publishing, it's changing all of those things. It's probably worth digging in a little bit and understanding how it works
Yeah.
and understanding how to use it to augment what you do.
Mhm.
A lot of people think it's going to replace what you do, and for most people who do things in a brainless way, it's going to replace them.
Yeah.
But for people who have to tell the AI what the real question is
Mhm.
and have it, do research for you and have it do those things, I think that's important. So, I would recommend if there's courses that are accessible to you that have that in the title, and that's something we're going to bring into our curriculum also, because it's like you sort of just have to know how it works, and you have to understand like how an ATM works in the same way. You just have to understand like this basic thing, and it's driving a lot of decisions in life
Mhm.
in our lives. And so how do we do it in a way that makes it work? So anyway, UC Santa Barbara is a great place. I remember visiting down there when I was back in the day, and it was like, damn, this is really cool. Like
Mhm.
this is it's really nice. So good for you, man. That's great.